Well, hey there, friendships. Welcome back to Curtis's Corner. If you're new here, hi, I'm Curtis. This is my corner, and you have just stumbled into the world of horror. So now, in this episode of the Scare Score, we are going to be looking at the 2016 follow-up to both The Conjuring and Annabelle. This is The Conjuring 2. Conjuring 2 stars Patrick Wilson as Ed Warren and Vera Farmiga as Lorraine Warren. So if you have not actually seen my past scare scores, I will link the playlist right up here so you can go check it out. You can go watch The Conjuring and Annabelle before you come back and watch this one. But if you have seen it, then strap in because we are in for a long, wild ride today. Okay? And lastly, I would just like to say thank you for coming on this wild ride with me. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you're interested in all the spooky ookums. And buckle in for this long-awaited ride for the third installment of this wonderful franchise. But without further ado, let's get to counting. The movie begins with Lorraine talking about a case they investigated in Amityville, New York in 1976. We see her explore the house in an out-of-body experience as she relives the events that happened to the DeFeo family. Our first scare happens at 2 minutes and 28 seconds with the sound of a gunshot. As Lorraine explores the house, a door opens to show a woman sitting on a bed. We hear her creepy whispers saying to kill before the woman looks at Lorraine asking, "What did you do?" Lorraine plays out the events of the massacre as she moves from room to room. I really enjoyed how they actually did this sequence of her kind of like traveling through all the different rooms, just because I found it was such a different way than we've ever seen before. And like, to my knowledge, out of all the Amityville type horror movies that I've seen, they've never done anything like this where it's almost like a recreation of what's happened, but then it's showing like as she's doing it, you're seeing the other person who was actually doing it at the time. So I think it was really neat that they chose to go this route. Ed starts getting nervous while Lorraine follows a child to the basement. As the boy plays hide-and-seek with Lorraine, he decided to invite more of his friends. Family? I don't know, probably family. The kids look toward a covered mirror. When Lorraine removes the cover, Lorraine looks. She's not there, only in the mirror. This time, even closer. Damn, she is one tired motherfucker. When Lorraine looks at the mirror, the nun grabs her, giving us our second scare at 6 minutes and 56 seconds. After Lorraine stops choking herself, furniture falls, showing someone else in the room with her. We see the man lurch backward, and we hear a wet, ripping sound as Lorraine shrieks. Ed and Drew wake her up, and Lorraine collapses in Ed's arms. The frame freezes as scrolling text tells us the investigation we are about to witness, followed by a title card. A montage of scenery in England while a backtrack of London's Calling by The Clash plays. We are introduced to our main character that this film centers itself around, Janet, with her friend, Camilla, smoking on the school steps. They are caught by the teacher, who then takes a puff as well. Why does no one care that we are in the middle of a pandemic right now? The bell rings to signal the end of the day, and Janet meets up with the rest of her siblings, Margaret, the oldest, Johnny, the oldest boy, and Billy, the youngest. Billy gets teased by some other kids about his stutter. The kids get home and we're told we are in Enfield, England in 1977. The kid's mom, Peggy, is on the phone talking to the landlord as the kids come in making all sorts of noise. That is so disrespectful. Peggy tells Janet that she is upset at her because the teacher called her and said that she was caught smoking. Pot, want to stop calling the kettle names? Thanks. Peggy calls Janet a liar. Johnny agrees. Janet gets mad. Margaret storms off while Billy whines about not having biscuits. They're cookies, Billy. Cookies. Peggy brings Billy some cookies while everyone gets ready for bed. Margaret sees Janet playing with a homemade Ouija board that doesn't give them the answers that they were looking for. Well, that's what you get for making it out of a cereal box. We see everyone is asleep in bed, but Janet seems restless. A distorted sound shows us Janet somehow ended up in the living room. Noises are heard upstairs, and the door handle starts to rattle. At 15 minutes and 32 seconds, we get our third scare with a loud knock at the door. Margaret opens the door after the second knock, but no one is there. Margaret assumes it was Janet as she walks around the corner and they go back to bed. The next day, Peggy talks to her neighbor, Peggy, as she does laundry. We are told the father of the kids is not in the picture as the washing machine shoots water in Peggy's face. The mom, not the neighbor. Ed and Lorraine are on a talk show arguing with a skeptic who calls them liars. Lorraine calms Ed down backstage. Back at the Hodgson house, Janet helps Billy with his speech by having him recite the song The Crooked Man. Peggy tells him not to eat all of his biscuits. Cookies! Or he could wake up thirsty. Can anyone guess what happened? No? Oh, well, I'll tell you. Billy wakes up to get some water. He stares outside at the swing moving by itself. Janet is having some trouble sleeping again. Margaret calls to her to get her to stop, and then goes back to sleep. At 21 minutes and 38 seconds, Janet shouts, "This is my house!" to give us our fourth scare. Janet talks to herself in different voices. Margaret seems slightly concerned, but doesn't move. Janet, in her loud voice, says she will break her mother's neck, and that she'll die with Billy. Margaret puts Janet back to bed and tries to go to sleep too. Margaret gets rudely awakened up by Janet yelling, "Stay away from Billy!" at 22 minutes and 51 seconds for our fifth scare. Margaret doesn't like that Janet says someone is on the other side of her bed. She turns on the light after she hears whispers and sleeps with the light on. Billy heads back to his room. He starts making lots of noise with a toy truck. When he kicks it into the hallway tent, he hears it again. After assuming it wasn't anything, the truck drives into the room when Billy gets into bed. Billy brings the truck back to the tent. After pushing the truck back in, we get our sixth scare at 26 minutes and 20 seconds when someone screams from inside the tent. Billy runs to his mom to tell her what happened. When she goes to investigate, no one is in the tent, but she hears a noise from downstairs. Billy hides in his room while Peggy goes to look. We see it's Janet just rocking in a chair. Peggy notices Janet has a fever as she tells her she's been sleepwalking. Who else slept and walked while in this series? You're gonna need some aspirin for that headache later there, Cindy. Can someone, get her a helmet or something? Oh, yeah. I really hope Cindy got that helmet. The next day, Janet watches TV during the rainy morning. The channel keeps changing and the remote keeps moving to different spots. The TV goes out, so Janet does what everyone does when something doesn't work. You hit it! We see a startling image of an older man's reflection in the TV sitting in the rocking chair. When Janet looks at the chair, the remote falls to the ground. As we see how terrified Janet is, we get our seventh scare, with the old man yelling, "My house!" at 32 minutes. The TV returns to normal, and Janet screams. Back at the Warrens, Lorraine wakes up to find Ed painting a picture of a nun. Not sure why he'd be painting that. There can't be any significance to it at all. Lorraine tells Ed they need to stop taking new cases. She never explains why, but Ed trusts her. Janet is tired of walking, so she ties her arm to her bed with a skipping rope. At 34 minutes and 48 seconds, we get another scare as Janet falls to the floor, waking up. At 34 minutes and 59 seconds, a knock at the door gives us another scare. Janet opens the door to an empty hallway. Janet tries to turn on the light, but someone forgot to change the light bulb. When Janet shines the flashlight on the chair, it moves, scaring her back to her room. Janet blocks her door with a chair, but when she tries to go back to sleep, the chair is beside her and the door opens. Footsteps approach the bedroom as Janet hides under the covers. The blanket rips off of Janet as a voice yells at 38 minutes and 48 seconds. Janet screams and cries, which wakes up Margaret. Margaret doesn't believe Janet when she says someone is in the house until the bed starts shaking. Both the girls screaming wakes up Peggy. Peggy thinks the girls are lying, but when Janet shows the bite mark on her shoulder, she gets worried. Peggy checks the room and finds no one is there. When she finds the crappy Ouija board under Janet's bed, she blames the events on her overactive imagination. Another scare at 39 minutes and 53 seconds sends the dresser against the door. You sure it's just an overactive imagination there, Peggy? The family runs to the neighbor's house, something that no one does in horror films. Peggy explains to Peggy what happened. Cops show up to investigate the house, and a chair moves by itself, causing the two officers to leave and contact their church. Back again at the Warrens, Judy is beating while Lorraine reads her Bible. Someone walks by the window behind Judy. Lorraine looks up to see that Judy's gone. She finds her standing in the doorway as she points to Lorraine's new house guest. Lorraine walks to the room the nun went into. She finds she's alone in the room, but behind her is something. Oh, it's just Ed's picture. A simple jump scare from loud music playing at 45 minutes and 31 seconds makes Lorraine turn around. As she turns off the music, the light by the picture shuts off. Lorraine goes back to the light, staring at the picture that seems more real than before. She turns the light on and the face changes back to normal. Wow. Normal for this creepy thing. When Lorraine tries to leave, the door closes with a loud growl and the windows all slam shut, causing Lorraine to start hyperventilating. The painting of the parents' family house, the setting of the film in the first Conjuring, starts to shake. We follow the shadow of a nun to the painting of her. As she stands behind the picture, her hands grab hold of either side. We get another scare at 47 minutes and 42 seconds as the nun runs out of the wall toward Lorraine. Lorraine falls backwards into the boxes to see that she is now in a cellar. As Lorraine looks around, the nun peeks around a corner and smiles because she's on candid camera. Lorraine yells at the nun, who yells back. We see Lorraine in her chair as she and Judy never actually left. You're ruining your Bible! The nun points for Lorraine to look. As she does, she sees Ed get impaled by a giant spike. Lorraine comes to and sees the mess she made of her Bible. Back in England, a man named Kent asks Peggy to put them on TV to get the word out so they can find help easier. Peggy agrees and we are introduced to a few more characters. We see Kent is doing an interview with Margaret and Janet. After Janet says things have been worse, Kent tries to antagonize the ghost by talking to it. Janet starts growling in a deep voice as lights flicker. We're told Janet is sleeping as her voice changes to a man's raspy voice. Maurice Grosse introduces himself to the voice, who responds with a knock-knock joke.
Knock, knock.
Maurice plays it along.
Very well. Who's there? Bill. Bill who? My name is Bill Wilkins, and I'm 72 years old.
That's a terrible joke. Next! Bill gives us some backstory on how he died and why he's still in the house.
I like to hear them scream.
I like screams too. Billy brings his mom some biscuits to cheer her up. Cookies. Next door, we see the Crooked Man box start on its own. As we zoom in, the Crooked Man picture disappears. The good boy wakes up Billy by ringing the pee-pee bell. Hurry up, Billy. Baron needs to go outside. Billy sees Baron by the door and opens it for him. However, the good boy is actually the Crooked Man being revealed. He trips Billy and starts to chase him while reciting the poem. Billy tells everyone the Crooked Man is after him. The family hears the poem as Janet walks around the corner. She screams and sends the fireplace guard flying into a china cabinet. She breaks the light bulbs and faints after winning her opera award. She starts having a seizure and foaming at the mouth. We transition to Ed and Lorraine being played the recording from the TV interview. They're told Bill's voice is coming from Janet and that they need to investigate. Lorraine is hesitant because of her vision, but Ed convinces her, telling her that he accepts whatever happens. Maurice brings the Warrens to see Peggy and her family. We see that Peggy keeps Janet and Margaret's room locked as most of what happened to them was in there. A bunch of crosses are hung in the walls, but they do nothing to stop the noises. Lorraine talks to Janet to try to make a connection with her. She tells her she's there to help and that when she was a kid she saw an angel. Janet tells her that Bill says that he wants to hurt her. Ed tells Peggy that negative entities feed off of bad experiences. Ed explains that in order to get proof, Janet needs to keep water in her mouth in order to prove Bill's voice is real. Bill doesn't answer, and Janet says they need to turn around. When they do, Bill finally comes out to talk. He tells Ed that the house is his and that he wants his family. Bill says he doesn't believe in heaven. When Ed shows him the cross, Bill starts moaning and screaming and talking in broken sentences. The lights come back on, and Janet spits out the water. Lorraine tells Ed she doesn't sense any presence. She believes Peggy and her family, but she doesn't know why she can't see anything. Janet ties herself to the bed again and goes to bed with Peggy. Whistling is heard, which wakes up Janet. But she's on the ceiling? That's awesome! Me next! Janet sees Bill sitting in his chair. He whistles and walks upstairs. As Janet reaches her hands out in front of her, she is pulled back through the ceiling and into the room of crosses. The crosses slowly start turning upside down as we get another scare at 1 hour and 20 minutes and 23 seconds when Bill runs out of the darkness at Janet. Janet screams, "Wake up, Peggy," who tries to get into the room. Janet gets pulled away from the door as Peggy looks in to see Bill breathing toward her. Pandemic. Peggy screams, "Wake up, Ed and Lorraine," who see Janet being strangled by the curtains. Maurice shows Ed and Lorraine pictures as evidence and confirms what Jill Bennett said is true. While Ed thinks some is good evidence, he agrees with the skeptic, Anita, that some things aren't good enough. Ed, however, says they will take a leap of faith to help them. Ed bought the family some records, but it doesn't work. He finds a guitar that he plays for them with Margaret's permission. They sit around as Ed sings "Can't Help Falling in Love" by Elvis Presley. The kids join in. Lorraine falls more in love with Ed, and a montage of equipment setup and exploration is played. Janet talks to Ed as he fixes their sink. He tells her a story from his childhood. Ed offers to fix the washing machine too. Lorraine talks to Maurice about why he's at the house. He explains to her about how his daughter died and why he wants to help. Ed goes through the lake that's forming in the cellar to get to the pipe leak. As Ed fixes the pipe, a figure rises from the water behind him. The figure moves toward Ed As Peggy warns him, it disappears. Peggy looks down to see an old man smiling at her as he grabs her arm at an hour and 33 minutes and 2 seconds. As she screams, she gets pulled under the water. Ed rushes over to help her, and Peggy tells him that she saw Bill and they notice a bite mark is now on her arm. Ed picks up an object that fell into the water and they see that they are a partial denture which fit perfectly along the bite mark. Janet stares into the kitchen, frightened. When Margaret asks what's wrong, Janet tells her she sees someone playing with knives and hiding in the dark. Johnny walks toward the kitchen to follow Ed's advice about sticking up for Janet. When Johnny gets into the kitchen, he sees all the knives stabbed into the table. He grabs one of them and static is heard. Margaret screams. When Johnny goes to look, Margaret says that Janet disappeared. At an hour and 36 minutes, Janet is beside Johnny, making the whole family scream. As Ed runs into the house, a chair flies by his face and explodes against the wall. Ed tries to go into the kitchen, but the door slams shut. Lorraine runs in to see what's with all the chaos. Ed runs to another door as a table flies against the wall. The door slams shut just as Ed gets to it. Ed pulls the door open, the kitchen is destroyed, Janet is missing, and Johnny is hiding in a pantry. Harry uses sound equipment to listen for Janet. He hears a growl, which gets Ed to open a cupboard with pipes and the electrical box to see that Janet is twisted and intertwined within. As Ed holds his cross up to her, she flinches and yells random words again. Janet passes out and Ed gets her out of the cupboard. Anita pulls Ed, Lorraine, and Maurice aside and tells them that she has proof that Janet is faking the whole possession. She shows them a tape of Janet throwing furniture and breaking utensils. When Anita confronts Peggy about it, Peggy gets upset and kicks them all out of her house. Maurice tries to get Ed and Lorraine to make the church believe them. Janet cries in the window as she watches them leave. Margaret asks Janet if it was true that she was faking it. She admits that it was true, because if she didn't, then Bill would kill her family. On the train, Ed and Lorraine play the recorded tapes of Bill speaking the random words. When he plays them at the same time, it says,
Help me! It won't let me go!
Lorraine has a vision and is able to talk to Bill. He tells her he wants to leave, but he can't. When Lorraine asks how to stop what's happening, Bill gives her a riddle. At an hour and 47 minutes, we get another scare from the nun, grabbing Bill and screaming at Lorraine. Lorraine wakes up and tells Ed what she saw, and they head back to Peggy's house. As Peggy cries in her messy kitchen, a loud crash and screams send her running to see what happened. When she gets in the room, Margaret is floating in the air. That looks fun! Janet doesn't want Margaret to feel lonely, so she floats too. Janet sends Margaret into a wall. Okay, not fun anymore. Peggy gets her family out of the house, but when she goes back, the door closes and locks her out. Lorraine tells Ed the riddle Bill gave her, which he answers.
Your name?
What a smart cookie. They show up at the house and Ed breaks a window. As he looks in, the couch hits him in the head. Ed runs to the back into the cellar. Lorraine goes after him and is locked out as she begs him not to go without her. He leaves to help Janet anyways, which worries Lorraine. Ed breaks through the floor and gets into the house. As he gets up, he's hit in the face by hot steam from a pipe. He tries to find Janet while his vision is blurry. I'm not sure how accurate really this is, because while yes, the steam in your eye is going to cause like a lot of blur happening, what is it doing to his hearing? I didn't think steam affected your hearing the same way it affects your vision. A creepy hand lurks around the corner as Ed walks by. We get a few minutes of point of view shot, and as we see Ed walking, the crooked man is following him. Ed starts reciting Latin while holding his cross to protect himself. Lorraine channels her inner Jennifer Love Hewitt.
What's your name? What are you waiting for?
And remembers she wrote down the nun's name in her Bible. When Lorraine turns to confront Valak, lightning strikes a tree, showing Lorraine what is intended to kill Ed. Ed finally makes it up the stairs when the crooked man's music box starts playing again. As Ed watches the crooked man walking, it disappears to give another fun scare at an hour and 59 minutes. The crooked man stands up and throws himself through the wall to travel behind Ed. Ed shuts the door just as the crooked man's umbrella smashes through it. Lorraine finally makes it into the house as Ed finds Janet staring out of her window. The windows shatter, cutting Janet's face as she walks up to the ledge of the window. Ed runs and catches Janet just as she jumps out of the window, catching her a couple feet above the tree spear. Lorraine runs to Ed as the curtain rings are slowly breaking. Lorraine gets to the room and she sees Valak emerge from the shadows. Lorraine runs to save Ed, but Valak screams at her and sends her into a wall, holding her in place. Valak smiles at Lorraine, but Lorraine has no more patience. She starts invoking Valak's name. Valak starts disintegrating. Lorraine tells Valak to go back to hell, and we see her true demon form showing as she disappears. Lorraine falls to the ground. Ed falls from the window. Lorraine grabs him just in time. Peggy comes in as Janet wakes up. Lorraine cries on Ed. The next morning, everyone is getting checked by paramedics. Peggy and Janet say thank you as Ed gives Janet his cross necklace. Aw, how nice. We're told that Peggy continued to live in her house and ended up dying in a chair in the living room that Bill died in. At 2 hours and 6 minutes, we get a small jump scare when Ed opens the door to his conduit museum in his home. He places the Crooked Man box next to Rory's music box in front of Annabelle. Ed hears Elvis play and he dances with Lorraine. Now, during the credits of this movie, they actually play the real recording that they did with like an interview of Janet. Now, the only thing is I don't know if it's the recording they did for TV where it was her and Kent, or if it's between her and Ed. Not entirely sure, but it is kind of a neat thing that they've included in this film, and yeah, it's fun. So The Conjuring 2 ran longer than any of the other 2 previous entries to this series. However, did it produce more scares than the others? Well, let's just float over and we will find out the score now. There were 19 scares in The Conjuring 2, and with a runtime of 1 hour and 34 minutes, we get a scare on average every 7.05 minutes. I'm going to award my Best Scare Award to none other than the moment when Valak grabbed the picture and ran towards Lorraine. I thought that was super neat. Not that it was super scary and like took you back, but because you knew it was really coming, but just how visually it was shot and how you had to slowly watch the shadow go, and it kept building up that intensity and the anxiety and the tension. It worked so well, and I thought it was just perfect. So that is the scare score for this week. If you enjoyed it, please make sure that you hit that like button and don't forget to share the video. Hit the subscribe button as well with the notification bell so you know when I post a brand new video. We will be looking at none other than Annabelle Creation on our next scare score, which came out in 2017. It is a prequel to Annabelle, which is a prequel to The Conjuring. So it's a pre-prequel? Anyways, stay tuned for that. It's fun. We got almost 400 views on Annabelle's scare score. Do we think that we can get over 400 this time within the first week? Oh, I hope so. Make sure you share this and let's get those views way up. Let's see if we can also get 10 likes on this video because, yeah. But until then, I will see all of you on the next one. Bye, friendships.